Rev up your engines! They're not going to make these anymore. After the next year, they're going to turn them into electric cars, and perhaps not great cars, but it is an Abarth. So I have to put a disclaimer here. Okay, 96% of Americans drive automatic transmissions. So none of them are going to buy this because they're standard transmissions. They're manual, right? The problem with the Fiat 500s, amongst other things, is Americans, 96% drive automatics, right? The automatics in the Fiat 500s were the biggest rolling piles of crap. I saw them blow up with as little as 5,000 miles. One of my customers bought one for her daughter. She was driving it to college. The transmission blew up on the way. They really are terrible cars if they're the regular Fiat 500s. But this is an Abarth, which is an Italian company that's been around for a long time. They specialize in making race-type vehicles. Now, this vehicle itself was made in Mexico. All the ones I see in the United States are made in Mexico. It even says on the door, made in Mexico. The engine is not made in Mexico. It's basically the same engine, except it's souped up. As you can see, it's a 1.4 liter engine, same size as the regular one. My Matrix has a 1.8 liter engine. It's basically the same engine that they put in the small Lotuses. Only in the Lotuses, they're souped up. And this is a souped up Fiat 500 engine with a turbo here, so it's turbocharged, and they have a decent amount of acceleration to them because it's a 5-speed standard transmission, a manual transmission. Me, I would have opted out for a 6-speed, but hey, that's what the Italians did. Now, this engine has a downside, in that when you look here in the front, it's plastic. This is a turbocharged engine with a rubber timing belt. Unlike what I normally say about cars, you want a timing chain, it's metal, it's strong, right? You don't want a rubber timing belt that's going to snap. In the case of this Abarth, you want one that has a rubber timing belt, because these Fiat engines are actually better, the timing belt, because the Italians make crappy timing chains. And the ones with timing chains, the chains often break and fly off. If you ask anybody who understands these Fiat Abarth engines, you want to buy the correct one. You want one that has a timing belt in it. For some reason, the vibrations, it revs up high, the belt can take it, but the cheap Italian chain can't, and they snap. Sure, you got to change the belt every 80 to 100,000 miles just for safety to make sure it doesn't dry rot or snap off. But it doesn't have the breakage problem that the timing chains in these engines, and that's a real big deal, because I have had customers buy the Fiat 500s, the engines with the timing chain. Almost every single one of them, the timing chain broke, and that was the end of the engine. The engine was destroyed. You keep changing the belts. I had a lady last year bring me an Abarth. She had 175,000 miles on it. She was really into engineering. She changed the timing belt herself, but she would change the timing belt every 80,000 miles, and with all that mods, it was still running pretty good. The only major thing aside from that was she had to put a clutch. She finally wore the clutch out. Now, as I said, after this year, 2023, they're not going to be making the Abarth as a gasoline car. They're going to be turning it into an electric car. Now, if you know anything about Italians and electricity, I would not buy an electric Italian car if my life depended on it, let me tell you. It is not a screaming electric car. It won't be like a Tesla Model S or any of the fast electric cars. It's more a runabout car that it's kind of against the Abarth image, if you ask me, because these make a lot of noise. They're fun to zip around in, right? But if you get an electric car, to me, it really doesn't make any sense. Be that as it may, everybody's fooling around with electric cars. I could understand an electric regular Fiat 500 because they're slow anyway, and people would accept it. But as a performance thing, I would expect more performance. But see, compared to the regular Fiat 500, it's got much bigger brakes on it, fancier wheels, lighter weight for better acceleration. But the Abarth Scorpion. Why a Scorpion? Because Mr. Abarth was born under the horoscope of Scorpio. You know, and of course it looks mean and vicious, right? It's got a stinger on it. That's what's behind that. I'm not a fan of low profile tires because you can see the rim isn't far from the road, so the rims will often get destroyed if you hit big bumps. So you got to be careful with that. Now, as we go inside, you can see, you know, it's set up for a little racy car. 5-speed manual transmission. It's dated because it's got a CD player. The main reason people buy these things is for fun. It does have an actual key. And And it does make a nice rumble through its dual exhaust, which that in itself is kind of funny because he went to get it inspected and they said, you're missing a muffler, and he had to go someplace else to get it inspected. Because of course, these have pretty much racing exhaust on them, and technically they're probably not legal in some states, but go to a Fiat dealer, they'll put a sticker on it. They sell the thing, so. Normal car, if you heard this noise, you would think it's a sign of imminent disaster. But that's just the noises these things make. I've had people bring me to them when they had a couple thousand miles. They make the same noise. Let's face the facts. Italians are loud, and their motors are rather loud too. Bit on the loud side. There's nothing wrong with it. If it was a Toyota, I'd say don't buy it. It's something wrong in the drivetrain, but that's just how these things are. They're noisy engines, which is one of the reasons, you see there's insulation on the top. When you close it, it's a lot quieter inside the car, and you don't notice it. Now, he bought it used with like 80,000 miles on it. He's put 4,000 or 5,000 on it. We're gonna check it out to see what shape it's in with the computer. You can see it's easy to plug in, so we'll turn the console on, and away we go. It already knows what it is. Fiat Chrysler. Here we can do a topology of the can line, so here we go. And while it's scanning, we'll look around. It is nicely set up. Black and chrome. The gauges are right there, simple to read. It's got a tire pressure monitor, and I suppose that probably doesn't work anymore, but you can go sport suspension, non-sport suspension, easy to get through shifter, sunroof with the mesh so the mosquitoes don't get you, and a tiny back seat for very small people. It's only got 8 trouble codes, so we'll start with the body control module. See what that code is? You can see left stop lamp, circuit open, right stop lamp, circuit open, check configuration. So these are things to do with the electronics and the brake lights, but they're working, so it's kind of odd. So for the time being, we'll erase the codes. We'll see what the other codes are. The instrument panel cluster, ECU internal watchdog micro failure. Well, there's a wacky one for you. This nice hotel gives you all the information, but the information isn't that much, right? This subtype is used by the control module to indicate a watchdog safety failure. Well, we'll turn the watchdog off here. If it's a hard code, well, there we go, it's green, so it's not a hard code. And then the tire pressure monitoring system obviously isn't working because the light's on. The bus is off to sensors. The left tire pressure sensor location is. Internal failure of the rear sensor, missing can line. So really, you don't expect an Italian car to have a tire pressure monitoring system that lasts long. Just get a tire pressure gauge, measure it every once in a while. Now what we really want to do is see what kind of shape this thing is in. So we'll go to the main control unit and we'll start it up. And we'll mess with live data. See what's going on. Remember, black is good, red is bad. Let's start looking at some of this data. So far, everything looks pretty good. The boost pressure is good. Look, target boost pressure, 103.42. Actual boost pressure, 103.42. That shows you that the turbo's still working good. Being a turbocharged car, you gotta worry about engine knock, so you can see each cylinder has a knock sensor, and they're all working fine. Variable valve system's in good shape. That thing is the after-run coolant pump runtime. It's longer than usual, but really, it does eventually shut off, so better to keep your engine cool when you shut it off than get it too hot. So it runs a little bit longer. We really don't care because you don't want a turbocharged engine to overheat, that the engine's going to continue to be cool and won't overheat, because when you shut your engine off, it's called the heat soak. It can actually get hotter just sitting there after you drive it than it does while you're driving it down the road, because the coolant fan's not on. In this case, the coolant fan's running a little bit longer than normal, but hey, I would leave that alone. You want it to run as much as you can. As long as it doesn't drain the battery, leave that alone. It's all no backup camera. There's no room for one anyways. So here we go. So we're going to see what this little engine can do in a minute when the traffic gets out of the way. And today's my 70th birthday, so let's see if I can drive being this old. All right, here we go. Okay, it's fun. It's not a race car. It doesn't throw me back in the seat, but it's a heck of a lot of fun to drive around with a standard transmission. And you gotta consider, hey, he bought it used, paid less than a third of what the car went for originally, and most of the stuff still works perfectly fine. On the rough roads of Rhode Island, of course, you're gonna feel it in a small wheelbase car. So it kind of bounces around. That's how these things are. Plus, it's an Abarth. It has a more racing suspension, so it handles really well. But man, you're gonna feel those bumps. You can see, look, doesn't shake at all at idle. You know, I mean, hey, it's kind of a fun little car. They look fast. They're not super fast, but they're kind of fun. This one's still got a lot of fun left, and it's funny because the owner said, how can I make it go faster? I said, you don't want it to go any faster. It's made to run the way it is, and this one runs perfectly. There's absolutely nothing wrong with how it runs or how it handles. It's just not a race car. They make it look like a race car, but it really isn't a race car. And like I said, they're not going to make them anymore, and they're going to make electric versions of the Abarth. But they look cool. They're fun to drive around in, and you can get them pretty dirt cheap in the United States. Like I say, this thing's only got 72,000 miles on it. He paid less than 1/3 of what the original cost was, and it's still running quite well. A little car, so it's okay. He gets like 30, 31 miles a gallon on a highway if he doesn't push it hard. So, you know, it's a decent car for driving around in, and it's a fun little car. It really handles quite well. It's zippy, it's fun, it rides kind of like a wagon, but hey, you can't have a fast cornering car that isn't going to have a stiff suspension, so you'd expect that. All in all, for a Fiat, this thing's in pretty good shape still. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.